Good morning, everyone. This is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sub That Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials here on Facebook. If you're joining us on YouTube, be sure to come join our Facebook group. The link is in the video description and at the end of this video. And of course, if you're joining us on Facebook, don't forget to go subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can easily find all of our tutorials after they are live in our neatly organized playlists. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Sub That Sublimation Canvas. If you guys are not familiar with that, this is one of the signature flagship products of the Sub That group. I launched this when I launched the group, and I am the only person who carries premium art grade canvas for sublimation. There are other vendors who sell similar products, but none of them are the same quality as mine. And the only other companies that do have this canvas are buying it from me. So just something to keep in mind that if you are a sublimation supplier and you're interested in carrying the premium sublimation canvas, you can reach out to me and I will get you with the wholesale pricing and whatnot. So first and foremost, Sub That Sublimation Canvas is not denier. Now, Condé, Johnson's, they sell what's called denier 600, which is technically still a canvas fabric, and it is advertised as canvas. And this is the same product that a lot of people are carrying. You're all familiar with denier. Denier is the same type of material that's used in boat seat covers, awnings, hiking boots, backpacks, all these different things in our lives that have sort of that waterproof or at least water repellent type of canvas material. So that's what denier 600 is. The main difference is going to be the weight of it. This is 12 ounce. That's the 12 ounce fabric weight versus denier 600, which is, I believe it's 7.5 ounces is the fabric weight for that. So it's a little bit thinner and more pliable, and that's why, of course, it's great for things like awnings, backpacks, and hiking boots. But in terms of the high quality product that you're trying to sell for your sublimation business, it's not as good of a choice as choosing Sub That canvas. You have to keep in mind when it comes to canvas products that people can go and buy a photo wrapped canvas for practically nothing through companies that are overseas and even like Walmart. I mean, I think you can get a gallery wrapped photo for like a 16 by 20 for like $35 at Walmart. Pricing like that makes it really difficult for small business owners like us to compete. Now, if you've ever bought one of these, you know that the fabric that they use is denier or it's cotton canvas that's printed. Either way, it's still a thinner product than Sub That Sublimation Canvas, which is nice and thick, very durable. It is water repellent. You can only sublimate on one side, and I will, of course, cover this again, but if you guys can kind of see, this is the right side. The right side is shimmery and has a much more distinct woven texture. And also it looks a little bit whiter just because of the angle of the light. But typically the back actually looks more white. And then the back looks very smooth. It feels very smooth. It doesn't have any shimmer or texture. So you can sublimate on the one side. It has a UV resistant coating in it, but you can also spray anything that's going to go outside with Ray Block, which is what I do. I'll actually show you guys. I did this in a tutorial in October. No, I did it in, I think, August of, it was either August or September of 2018. And this has been outside in North Carolina. And you can see it is not faded at all. I did this with the SG400 using Sublegit ink. This is called a canvas wall hanging. If I back up a little bit for you guys. You can do these inside. I actually made this to hang on my door outside, but these are also great. The concept for doing signs for gallery walls, for nurseries, anything of that nature. And I am working on a few more specific types of designs, and I will be doing more tutorials on the different ways that you can use canvas. So you can see that even after all that time, there's like a little bit of fuzziness on the edge, but there's no real fray. And this really has sat outside through a lot. So it's a little wrinkly because, you know, I've had my winter decor up since the end of October. And I usually just roll them up like this to store them. Makes it nice and easy. So Sub That Canvas is available in a variety of sizes on my shop. The link is in the video description. It's www.ofloveandshiplap.us, and you can check underneath the sublimation supplies to find the canvas. Now, in terms of things you can do with Sub That Canvas, you can do a reverse canvas, which is what I'm going to show you guys how to do today. I'm going to show you guys how to do it with a custom frame size, but you can always buy just like budget canvas at the craft store and remove the cotton canvas and use that frame. And I do have other videos showing that. That's a great option for people who are a little afraid to try and do a custom size frame like I'm showing you guys today. But the custom frame definitely gives you a better selling point. And between that and using premium mark grade canvas, you are going to have a much higher quality product that of course is custom, that people can't just go pick up at Walmart. And at the end of the day, we are all trying to compete with that. One of the best parts, in my opinion, about Sub That Sublimation Canvas is that I actually priced it to be right in line with the Condi and Johnson's denier. So you get a better quality product for the same price. And my shipping costs are better as well. So if you're in the US or Canada, don't forget that I have $3 shipping on canvas. And I think if you order over like $100, it's free shipping on my website. So just something to keep in mind. I don't run too many specials. I might have like 10 or 15% off here and there. Just if you guys are like thinking I'm going to have a ton of specials on canvas, I don't. The main reason I don't is because I priced it very affordably to begin with. And this comes in large bolts that I cut down. So there's only so much room for me to take out of it. If you really want to save big, keep an eye out for June and December, because my Black Friday deal and my birthday special, since my birthday is in June, has consistently been buy one, get one half off, or buy one, get one free. So those are your only real times to like really save. But always pay attention to the group, pay attention to the emails. If you're not on our email list, go and subscribe to it. Because if I throw in a random sale, you definitely want to be able to take advantage of that. So now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to head out into the garage and I will show you guys how to make your custom size frame. The items that you're going to need to cut your own frame are pretty basic. I would say that if you don't already have the tools, you can easily get everything you need for around $25. So a tape measure or a yardstick. Yardstick's only 99 cents, so keep that in mind. You're going to want a fine grit sanding block. I buy these in a pack of 12, I believe, from Harbor Freight Tools for around $5. A T-square is always helpful anytime you're doing woodworking to make sure that all your lines are straight. I get mine at Harbor Freight Tools. It's, I think, like $1. And then you're going to, of course, want something to mark with and glue for the next step, and something to cut your wood with. Now, I, of course, have a saw. I'm not going to be showing you guys how to cut it on the saw, mostly because you'll see my blade guard snapped. And I haven't replaced it yet, so I don't really want to do that on a live video in case something does happen. Safety first, you guys. If you or your partner doesn't have a miter saw, some people call them chop saws, you can always just use a hand saw in a miter box. So a basic fine tooth hand saw is around $6 or $7 at Home Depot, and then a miter box is going to be about $10. And a miter box is basically just like a plastic box that's about this big that you can set your wood into, and it has grooves to, or channels, I guess you would call them, to hold the saw blade in place to give you a straight cut. A miter box is really easy to use, and I highly recommend it if you're not, if you don't have a reason to go and buy power tools other than this. I only have ample power tools because I used to primarily do signs and furniture, and as I've moved away from that, I have less use for them. But of course, I like having them on hand for my own little projects. I did mention that if you don't want to make your own custom size frame or just a custom frame in general, you can always use one of these. This is this is one from an art canvas, a budget canvas from Michael's that I think I have one. Hold on. Ooh. It was just one of these, and I just removed the cotton canvas off of it and then stained the wooden frame. Now, people have different opinions about this. If you've done vinyl, this is exactly how reverse canvas was done originally. You bought budget canvas, you took off the cotton canvas, you pressed your vinyl design on it, you stained the frame, and then stapled it to the back like we're gonna do today. So you still have that option to do that with the Sub That Sublimation Canvas, but if you wanna have a nicer quality frame, because this is very thin and lightweight, and with the premium art grade canvas, honestly, having a nice piece of wood definitely makes a bit of a difference. But I always believe in working with what you have and what's within your skill set. So just so you know, that's another option. I've showed other videos of that. This is just a leftover frame from a demo that I did do. Now, the design I'm doing today is going over top of my fireplace, and I printed the transfer to be 12.5 inches by 18.5 inches because I wanted to use like the maximum size of a 13 by 19 page. So I want to make sure that my frame is going to accommodate that accordingly. Now, the design I did is going edge to edge, so I also have to take that into consideration. I recommend sizing your pieces 1/4 of an inch smaller than whatever your transfer size is, because this gives you a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that your design doesn't look like it's too small, and it gives you a little more room to make sure things centered. And of course, if you do a full bleed design like I did, you're also going to have to take into consideration making sure everything's lined up so that it does have that like perfect full bleed look. So the first thing we're going to need is our wood. This is it's called 1x2 trim. It looks like it's about 6 feet long. I didn't measure it, but I'm pretty sure it's 6 feet long. I got this at Lowe's. Some Home Depots do carry the premium pine, but not all of them, and mine actually doesn't. So I always get this at Lowe's. You can see it's pretty nice. It's nice and smooth already. So it's not going to require a whole bunch of extra work sanding, which of course saves you plenty of time. Always keep in mind that any wood that you buy has a film on it. You can't really see it. Sometimes you can see it in person where it kind of has like a sheen to it. That sheen is just an oil that's put on by the lumber mill when the wood is planed and cut. So you do have to sand no matter what, because if you don't sand and that sheen is on there, you're going to notice that you don't get a smooth coating of stain or paint. It might take longer to dry. It might even repel it a little bit depending on how much of that oil is on the wood. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so I said that my design is going to be 18.5 inches. And the first thing you want to do is consider how you want your frame. You could, of course, do picture corner or farmhouse corner. And farmhouse corner is where the pieces are like this versus picture corner, which is where they would be both cut at an angle and look like a picture frame. I believe, yeah. So this is what's called picture corner, where the pieces are both cut at 45-degree angles so that when you line them up, they make a nice rectangle and they look like a picture frame. Now, because my home is sort of a cozy farmhouse feel, I am gonna make sure I cater to that. I always like to cut the side pieces first because the side pieces are going to be the exact length. Now, what I mean by that is that when I piece my frame together, this is going to be a side piece and this is going to be a top piece. The top piece, because of how it's going to be glued, has to be longer so that it can account for the width of each side piece. Assuming I want to make sure that that center space in between my frame is the size of my transfer. So I'll go ahead and mark on the wood first. My transfer is going to be 18.5, and I want to do it just a quarter of an inch smaller so that I can make sure everything that I need is going to be covered. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it at 18.25. And if you don't know how to read a ruler, one, I suggest that you learn because it's not that difficult. But two, they do make rulers that are marked. They also make tape measures that are digital. So just, I know a lot of people get a little afraid. So we can see our little mark. Now I want to make a line for my saw blade to keep up with. Whether you use a hand saw, if you don't know how to use it, sorry guys. If you don't know how to use a T-square, it's got a little ledge on it. You just line it up to the edge. Make sure that your side is with your mark, and voila. Whether you're using, a miter saw or you're using a hand saw, you're going to lose about 1/8 of an inch of the wood when you cut the line. So you want to make sure you cut directly on the line, not in front of it, not before it, on the line. And this will help ensure that all your pieces are actually the same size. So we're going to hold right on that line again. We're going to do our 8.25. Put our T-square there and mark it. Now for the next pieces, our top pieces, we want to make sure the internal space is going to be that 12.25, because like I said, my transfer is 12.5, but we have to add on the depth of the wood. So even though this is called a 1x2, the depth of this wood is actually only 1.5 inches. And it's very important to measure if you're not familiar with working with wood, because they are generally anywhere between 1/4 and 3/4 of an inch difference from what they say. So like if it says it's a 6 inch, if it says it's a 6 inch, a 1/2 inch high by 6 inches wide, it's actually only 5.5 inches wide. So just something to keep in mind, that the actual length and the nominal length, as they call it, are two different things. And it's really just designed to make it easier for contractors. So we need to do 15.25 from our line. So again, that's 12.25 plus 3 inches to account for having the side pieces on either side. And then of course, we'll just measure that again. Okay, and just like that, our wood piece is ready to be cut. As I mentioned, I'm not going to be cutting this because my blade guard broke. And I just don't want to, I really don't want to straddle a camera while I'm trying to use a saw. So I pre-cut. I have all these pieces here for you. Let me see if I can give you guys a little bit better of an angle. There we go. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is just take your sanding block and give this a nice good sand. And you want to make sure that you absolutely hit your edges where you cut, because you will see a little bit of splinter. That's actually not that bad. I have a fine tooth blade, so if you use a finer blade, you get less splintering. There we go. It's hard to see, but there is a little splintering right there on the edge. So we want to make sure that we sand everything. And again, you can do this with a power sander, but if you're working on a budget, hand sander. And plus, this is actually a little easier to me because this don't need a lot of sanding. You're just gonna go with the grain of the wood. Make sure you give a few extra hits on the edges there where it was cut. And again, we're just sanding off that sheen. And if you use the premium pine, it requires very little sanding. If you use the cheaper stuff, it requires a lot more. And then you want to do your edge pieces as well. And again, it doesn't really take a whole lot because pine is very soft, so it's really easy to sand. And this process actually does not take long at all. Now, I've actually already sanded these in preparation for the tutorial, so I'm not going to show you any further how to sand it. What we're going to do next is go ahead and assemble these. See, try and give you guys the best angle here. So when we go ahead and line up our pieces, all right, just like that, we line them up, kind of back up for you. And now we're gonna just go ahead and put a little bit of wood glue at each of our seams. And then we're gonna go ahead and clamp these. This is my preferred wood glue, Tightbond. It comes in a couple of different formulas. It's really great wood glue. A little goes a long way. I think that this bottle was like $2. It's very cheap. And it dries quickly. That's one of the reasons I like it. So I'm gonna put the glue on my side pieces because that's just gonna be easier with the ends being longer and whatnot. So you don't need a lot. As you can see, I just put just enough. And we want to make sure that our edges are lined up right here because we want this to be a straight frame. Oops. As I moved that. And we'll go ahead and do the other one. Same thing. Okay, so we've got our pieces all lined up the way they need to be, and then the last thing that we want to do is clamp it to let it dry. I have a whole bunch of these simple adjustable clamps. They're from Harbor Freight Tools. I think that they're $4. They're relatively cheap. So you're going to go ahead and let me turn you guys just a little bit so you can get a good view. You're going to set it on your edge. With this one, every clamp's a little bit different, but with this one you just squeeze that little lever to slide it in, and then we tighten it. We want to be careful when we tighten it not to have our wood shift. Okay. Now I know you couldn't quite see it, but I just turned this little screw on here and see how the glue is just starting to come out. You want to make sure you don't tighten it so tight that the glue oozes out completely, but a little bit of oozage is totally fine because you want to make sure that you are actually getting a nice tight clamp so that your frame will be good to go. And this piece just needs to go out a little bit. There we go. Put our second clamp on. Now you can stain your wood before or after, it's totally up to you. Kind of depends on my mood and also the temperature for me. Right now it's a little cold out here this morning to stain first, So I'm not going to do that. And that's it. The last thing we want to do is just any glue that's oozing out, you just want to wipe that off because you don't want to have to deal with it later. And if you don't have a workbench like I do, you always want to just put maybe like a piece of builder's paper or something to that effect down. Just going to check my clamps, make sure everything is tight. It looks like we are good to go. So this is gonna need a few hours for the glue to dry, and then once it's dry, we can go ahead and stain it. Now, I'm not gonna show you guys how to stain. It's relatively easy. You just wanna use an old t-shirt or a stain rag and rub on your coat according to the directions. I prefer the Varathane and Rustoleum Premium because they are one coat coverage and they dry in an hour. And when you are a business owner, time is money. This is the color I used on the one I'm going to show you guys today. It's called Briar Smoke. I love this color because it's like a grayish brown. But as you can see, I have, I don't even know, 8, 9, 10, 11. I've got like 14 different colors of stain. So Varathane has a lot of really great colors, including some fun ones like the Vintage Aqua and the Rustic Sage and the Coral. So depending on what kind of market you're in, whether you cater to farmhouse or primitive, or whether you're dealing with more modern, you definitely have a bunch of different options in terms of stain. You can find all of those. The Rustoleum ones you can actually find at AC Moore, Hobby Lobby, and I think Michael's. And Varathane and Rustoleum are the same brand. The Varathane ones I usually find at Home Depot, and sometimes they have them under the Rustoleum name. But it's that premium one. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. So now I'm gonna head back inside and I will show you guys how to use a completed frame to complete your reverse canvas. A reverse canvas is pretty easy to do, whether you've made your own frame like I just showed you guys how to do, or if you're using one of the pre-constructed frames that comes with the budget canvas, which you can buy. Either option is great, and it's always the best idea to go with what works for both your budget and your skill set. But of course, don't be afraid to try and learn something new. So now that we have our frame, this is the one that I showed a picture of in the group, that it was drying, we're ready to get our reverse canvas together. So we're going to need our transfer, of course. I've printed mine on my Workforce 7710 using Printer Jack ink and also Printer Jack paper. I'm going to actually trim the edge of mine, which you don't have to do, but it's always good practice because sometimes you might find that you got a little ink on your edge. I had a little issue with my black, so I'm not surprised that there is some ink on the edge of my paper. I sized my design about as big as the page is because I wanted this gallery wrapped, or this reverse canvas to be a pretty big size since it's going on top of my fireplace. All right. So there's our paper trimmed. I know you guys couldn't quite see that, but so we've got our transfer. We're gonna want a piece of Sub That Sublimation Canvas. You will notice that the right side has a distinct woven texture and a little bit of shimmer versus the wrong side, if you look at those, which looks a lot smoother and flatter. This is written on the instructions. Usually the right side is rolled into your roll to make it easy. You're also going to want a staple gun and a damp cloth. So let's go ahead and head over to our heat press. The first thing that we're going to do is pre-press our canvas. Keep in mind that even though this is art grade canvas, it is still considered a textile, and all textiles absorb moisture. Even if they don't feel wet, they still have absorbed moisture from the atmosphere. So you want to be sure that you pre-press, because pre-pressing will push out that moisture. And if you don't, that moisture, when it's under the high heat, causes shrinkage of the fibers, which you can see right here. See how it's got little bubbles? That's because the part that is on the heat press is shrinking. Now, shrinkage with the canvas is a lot more noticeable than, say, on a t-shirt, simply because on a t-shirt, the weave of the fibers is much looser than on canvas. Like, this canvas is designed to be water resistant, so it can be outside, but the way that it's water resistant is by this very tight weave. So you can pre-press for 30 seconds, or you can do the full time. I'm gonna go ahead and do 60 seconds since I've already been talking. It's also normal if your canvas curls, which you'll notice it curl if your piece doesn't extend past the heat press. So just keep that in mind. Those are totally normal things. They're just caused by the moisture being pushed out. Now, I didn't say it, but I actually pre-pressed my canvas face down. And I like to do that because I find that it makes it curl a little bit less. So just a little trick there. We're going to flip it over and we're going to go ahead and place our transfer. Now, because I have plenty of extra room, I don't really need to worry about centering this or anything. My frame is already sized to the size of the design. We do just want to make sure it's relatively straight. So I'll go ahead and put a piece of protective paper over this. Now, you don't want to use adhesive sprays when you use the canvas because it can leave kind of a weird film. You can use heat tape. I usually do use heat tape, but it's not a requirement. I'm just out of heat tape at the moment, and Amazon will be delivering some more tomorrow. So today I will make do. Because the canvas doesn't have a lot of flow like fabric, you're less likely to have your transfer jump all over the place and potentially shift. And as long as you've done a good pre-press, you shouldn't get any ghosting. Again, one of the leading causes of ghosting is because the fibers of your textile start to shrink when they're under the high heat. And this is the same little phenomenon that we experience every time we take our clothes out of the dryer. So once again, that crinkling action or rolling up of the canvas after you've pushed all the moisture out of it, it's completely normal, nothing to be alarmed about, and it will actually loosen on its own. The canvas will naturally absorb moisture from the atmosphere. It's very hot. Pull that off. Just want to show you guys this really quick. Can you guys see that there is like almost no gray left on that paper from those trees? Yeah, this is printer jack paper and ink, but I'm really impressed by the paper. Let's go ahead, pull that off. Give you guys a nice good look at this. The colors on Sub That canvas always look vibrant and beautiful. I know this is a very simple design, so it doesn't show that quite as well, but people have posted doing pictures and stuff in the groups. I mean, you can see the black is very rich in black, and so is the red. This is exactly what I was going for. Now, when you're pressed for time, you can honestly just leave this out and it'll start to reabsorb moisture pretty quickly. But when you're pressed for time, like we are today, one of the things you can do to help reintroduce moisture faster is throw a damp cloth on it. And you can throw a damp cloth on the back and let it cool completely. Or you can just go ahead and hit it with your heat press a couple of times for just a few seconds each time. So that's what I'm going to do. You can hear it sizzling. You don't need a lot. Again, we're just trying to reintroduce some moisture back into the canvas. And the main reason we're doing this is because when we pull this onto our reverse canvas, we want to make sure that it's nice and tight, and we want it to stay tight. Without that atmospheric moisture back, sorry, that's hot. When the moisture goes back in naturally, it's going to loosen up that canvas. So this just helps speed up that process. We don't want it wet. So if you guys can see the little dots and stuff, I'm just going to hit this for just a few seconds and absorb that right out. So now we'll go ahead and take that off of our press. And bring you guys over here. Let me see if I can adjust you so you can see better. There we go. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and line up our frame. Now, because of the way I did this, this is designed to be an edge-to-edge design. I sized my design 12.5 inches wide. That was the maximum I could get on the page. And then I made my frame 12.25 inches wide so that I would have a little bit of leeway. So what we're going to do is we're just going to very carefully kind of pull those edges of the canvas on either side. And you want to kind of pull it taut and hold your thumbs against your frame and then flip it over. Oop. I'm above you guys, so I know that was a little hard to see. And I shifted it because it's really hard to do this with the camera. Let's try that one more time. So we're gonna line it up. I've never tried to like tape this as I flip it. Again, I'm out of heat tape, so it's kind of a moot point today, but it's always an option that you can try. So I'm gonna hold that tight so I don't shift it. And I'm gonna set it down. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna kind of alternate sides, up and down, side to side, and stretch as we go. So I'll go ahead and put my first staple here. I'm just gonna triple check because I just did that. All right, put our first staple. And now I'm gonna pull this over, or look at this again and make sure everything is straight. All right, so I had it pulled over a little bit further than I wanted. I have an industrial staple puller. I just don't have that right now. So I'm actually just gonna rip this. Not the most ideal plan, but since I'm on a live video and I did not get it straightened the way it needed to be, and this is for me, so I want to make sure that I have it the way I want it. There we go. So again, make sure you have a staple puller nearby. I didn't really plan for something to go wrong. And if you weren't doing a design like this one that's edge to edge, you probably wouldn't run into this issue. But I didn't give myself a whole ton of room. I gave myself just enough room. Okay, I'm gonna flip this again. I'm gonna put my staple in. All right. There we go. Now we're in good shape. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to flip this back over and we're just going to kind of pull it from side to side and alternate where we're going and pulling it tight as we do. The first couple of staples are the hardest part because you're trying to make sure everything is exactly straight as you want it. So that is definitely, those first couple of ones are the hardest. Once you get past the first couple of ones, you're good to go. And you'll be facing straight forward on yours, which I promise you, that also makes this whole process a lot easier. Gonna just hold that up so I can get that top piece. And pull it down. So now that we've got our first 4 staples in, we're just going to keep rotating it and alternating it and pulling from different directions. Like I said, those first couple of staples are the most important and also will give you the most headaches, if we're being honest. Don't forget to pull and do your corners. And you can use, I'm using 3/8 staples today. But you can use, really any size staple you want, as long as it doesn't go through the front of your wood. So we don't want to forget about our corners. And basically, when you go to one, you go to the other in terms of the sides and angles that you're doing. And you just keep rotating them around. And remember, the most important part is that you pull and stretch as you're doing this. All right, let's see how we're looking. I would say that we are looking pretty good. I'm going to just do a few more on the side to make sure everything really is nice and tight. Again, pull, staple. If you've never used a staple gun before, all you really have to do is just hold it flat against your surface and pull the trigger. It's very easy. And you can get, this staple gun is just like a base model. I think it was maybe $12 at Home Depot. All right. I'm just gonna put in a few more, mostly just to hold down that canvas. All right. Now the last thing that we wanna do is just trim off the excess. You can do this with a pair of scissors. You can do it with a rotary cutter. It's really up to you. As you hear me rustling it around, it's because I'm looking for my rotary cutter, which I put in the wrong drawer. So if you're going to use a rotary cutter, you're just going to roll right along the edge there. Make sure you're using some sort of a protective surface. Like I'm on a self-healing cutting mat, and I find that that works great. So we're going to go, actually, I need to rotate this. I just rotated my blade to the other side. Because the little, screw bolt, there we go, that I'm screwing on, was gonna be in the way, and the blade was gonna be too far over because of the depth of this. So go ahead and set this right on the edge. Give it a nice trim. You can also use an X-Acto knife. This is not going quite as smooth as I would like it to, simply because I've got you guys and I have to reach around the tripod. I also need a new blade on my cutter here. There we go. All right, we just got our last piece here. And it looks like I just need to trim my edge right here, which I'm just going to do with scissors because it's going to be a little easier. Mostly because of the size of this. So I'll just... All right. And then the last thing you can do, which I'm not going to do because this is for me, but if you want to cover up the staples, what you can do is take a piece of thick painter's builder's paper, like you can get at Home Depot, cut it to the shape or size, and then use some hot glue or double-sided tape to glue it all the way around. And then that will, it's the same thing that's done at art galleries. I forgot to pre-cut one so I could show you guys in the demo. And unfortunately, it's all out. And let's stand that up. Or not. I guess we'll just lay it down. And there you have it. That is how you do a custom size reverse canvas. Keep in mind that the technique does take a little bit of trial and error, especially if you're new to woodworking, to reverse canvas, to any of it. But don't lose hope. You can buy canvas in an assortment of sizes on my website. That is www.ofloveandshiplap.us. If you guys have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. And other than that, I hope you guys have a very wonderful day.